Morning, everyone. Great to see all of you here. My name is Chetan Parekh. I'm the managing partner for FinTech practice. So I look after many of these digital programs and projects and advisory for customers. So I'll take you through our perspective, and I've drawn a very, very interesting global to India comparison and what India brings to the table as well, which is quite a huge opportunity. So as you can see from an India perspective, India has started some of the digital innovations very early, very differently. So when you look at the digital banking market, right, in specific, it's a very different market. Normally, Revolut, you heard in the morning from Philippe, they started a digital bank when many of us did not know what is a digital. So India's story on the digital is very different. And if you look at the market, then we'll tell you opportunities and look forward. Just go next. Yeah. So easiest thing on the channel. Now, when we say digital banking, it means different things for different markets, right? But India, predominantly a very, very large population, digital banking starts with channel. And internet is still quite a popular channel, followed by mobile. Mobile, like any other market, thanks to smartphone devices, is growing very, very fast and catching up. And then there is a whole omni-channel expectation. Where am I going to, as we heard in the morning, nobody goes to branch now, but people do call contact center and say, I'm looking for this service and that service. So omni-channel gives you a single experience across all channels. You are able to see what customer is trying to do across channels as well, from a bank perspective. Then there is a series of upcoming channels. So WhatsApp is one of the key upcoming channels many banks is implementing. But Metaverse and some of the other smart channels which are yet to come. As all of you know, watches are still quite expensive. Apple Watch or any smart watch is still very expensive. There is no large adoption. But you will see that in Generation Z and Generation M, that trend is fast changing. Watches are becoming much more available, and people do use them for a quick alerts and decisions. So that's what the digital channel is. Go next. Now, this is a very, very interesting slide. So all of us think Asia is quite ahead. Asia is huge. Digital is big story. So yes, it is 805 million digital user base. But when you look at the Asia user base, see the penetration level, 19% only. So there is a huge opportunity. As devices catch up, internet catch up into rural areas, there is a huge opportunity in Asia. But today, if you see a most matured market from digital perspective, right? It's 47% in Europe, 361 million. Now, of course, reasons there have been different. Europe relatively has an aging population. Getting to a branch is quite expensive in Europe by pulling your car out and getting to the branch. So preferred first mode is calling the bank or using the bank app. So that's one of the reasons when we see in Europe, right? US, of course, very large amount of penetration, 250 million. The key message here is Asia Pacific is likely to be the next big story. Question is, how do we participate in this story? In deepening the penetration and bringing the innovation channels, right? So that's where India is going to play a big story. And the numbers, if you see, there's a huge amount of banking statistics numbers, around 85 million in Europe by end of 2020. So that's number-wise, global story is quite strong on digital. Moving next. So when you look at India, now there are three key different graphs on the screen. And each one of them is interesting. So what you see is we are 35 million user base today in India. And it's going to go into 50 million by 2025. So very, very healthy growth. And if you look at these are every year numbers. So we're talking about 250 million users across India in next 3 years. Yeah, so that's the story. Now, thanks to UPI and all the successes, as of now, 48 billion transactions in this year. Only January had 8.2 billion transactions on UPI. So it's literally a hockey stick, and that's becoming almost a benchmark for the world. So payments, India is number one today, followed by China and US. So UPI story clearly shows us that if you give a service in India well, simple, the adoption can be huge. And that's the story which you see on UPI. But if anybody believes that lending is tough in Indian market, you don't have data, you don't have alternate data, almost 80% of global lending apps are Indian market-oriented apps. And see the growth, 5x growth on digital lending using apps. Now, some of them may not be completely straight through, some of them may be just an application drop, some of them may be instant decisioning apps. But the story is digital lending is already on a grand success from an India perspective. So clearly shows huge market potential and a big story both from liability and assets when it comes to banks. Moving further, now let's look at India banking perspective and type of licenses we have. India is again a unique compared to the global because I see across markets. So we have traditional banks with innovative digital arms like Kotak 811, a huge acquiring organization. Yono from SBI is a global success story. How can a oldest bank have such an interesting innovative channel? So there is a digital brands which is going to become a mantra for Indian banks. Now, do you have 1, 2, 3? That depends. You have one for retail, one for SME, one for corporate. That again depends. Second, there is the whole payment banks, which is licensed in India, delivered. Again, a huge success story. But also there are early startups and stops, and AML issues and profitability issues. So everybody is looking towards profitability in payments bank. How do they make money? And then there is a whole neobank. Now, neobank is globally a huge story. Let's define neobank. Neobank is a bank, or rather a fintech, which is having a mobile banking app, but doesn't have a license. So it uses license of a financial institution. So you will see FI powered by Federal Bank, Jupiter. So they do source and very specific business they are allowed to do in the front office perspective. Neo. So these neobanks are today operating with third-party licenses of financial institutions. So these are the three modes. You can have a digital organization within India. But what's changing, moving next, is again, there are some fundamental drivers to how the story is driving. You look at the macro factors. Internet penetration, one of the fastest growing. Government. Now, if we are undermining our government initiatives. Globally, countries are challenged where government has other agendas to do, and they're not really focused on digital. In India, government is focused with Jan Dhan, Shekhar spoke about earlier, which can create a huge demand. And that's where government is driving the show. Fintechs, there's never a better fintech market compared to Asia and especially India. So huge amount of 20 to 100 startups. So you have a lot of fintech story. And COVID has, of course, accelerated globally the trend. Now, when you look at bank factors, I think very, very well said by Doctor in the morning, improved security. Now, one key thing people keep in mind in digital banks is security. They're very, very worried in a minutes of seconds, money goes away. So how do you drive improved security and cost effectiveness? And cost effectiveness, again, is a big story. All the banks, while such a large amount of growth, don't want to ramp up the cost structures. So that's, again, a bank's factor on supporting. And customer. Customer is always, as Philippe mentioned in the morning, experience and convenience. So experience, which Deb mentioned, and convenience. So convenience is a big, big story from customer perspective. So even if you believe that a 50-year-old or a 40-year-old is not going to switch a bank to digital bank, that's not true. It is demand and convenience. If solution is available with a lower fee structure, people will move. from a traditional banks out. So this is the things which are driving Indian market. Moving further, RBI is not behind when you look at the, again, opportunities. Go next. So there are 4 key opportunities when it comes to digital. Unbanked, we spoke about in the morning, the new generation of users and communities. You will see Generation Z and a Generation M. The digital SME, the whole SME, single obligor or 2 obligors kind of organizations who wants asset but at smooth. They don't want to make 4 visits and 5 visits. And the whole fintech, how you launch it. So these are the 4 key opportunities when we see India market. Go next. Now unbanked, we are talking about 267 billion is sitting in dormant accounts in India. Right? So there's a large amount of dormant accounts. If you look at a study which recently published, reasons bank accounts are inactive is financial institutions are far too away. So people believe their branches, which we don't want to visit, they still want to visit and they don't believe it's there in their taluka or region. India has set up 75 digital banking units and 150,000 post offices. So the reach is changing, financial inclusions, a big story in India. So that is something, anyway, India has a very less amount of financial institution compared to your size of population and unbanked. If I compare globally, the number of banks in the smallest countries and number of banks you have in India is a very huge amount of unbanked situation. So this is going to fundamentally help digital. Go next. Now the generation. So younger generation, and again, there are 3 generations in younger generation also. So 18 to 29 as the bankable age, almost 47% of Indian population, bankable population is sitting in that bucket. 36% is in 30 to 39. So people still believe they're young at heart till they're 39, and that's the next generation of population. And the 40 to 49, close to 15%. So Generation Z and Millennial, as the first 2 segments are called, they are heavily reliant on smartphone, convenience. They don't have time. They don't want to go to bank, not because they don't like a tea or a coffee there. It's just they don't have time. They're too fast. They might as well enjoy a Netflix series rather than going to a bank. So that's what they are looking for. And EMI and installment payment companies see younger. See, younger generation has a very different habit. Our parents had an habit, save money, keep money for future. But younger generation is having a very, very different perspective. They want to celebrate the life, enjoy the life, even if it means lending and taking their salaries to full expense out. They don't mind. So it's a very different world and a different behavior. So nobody should benchmark based on the past. Move next. SME. As you can see the comparison on the screen, India is one of the lowest, India and Australia are one of the lowest in SME penetrations when it comes to contribution to GDP. So there is a huge demand, and when SME is looking for much more than banking. It's a mom and pop business or a medium-sized business. They don't have many resources, people to go to bank. So if a bank can become an anchor bank, an account, giving banking services around it, it becomes a huge opportunity. And there is an opportunity just clearly 10 to 12 points when you look at the global other markets. And so it's a whole beyond banking services and a single platform. So you will see these platforms emerging in Indian market. Moving next. Again, this collaboration which you're seeing between banking community, and again, thanks to licensing, License Raj in India, fintechs need banks to launch their services from a neo perspective. Kotak has already tied up with Pine Labs for acquiring. Axis is partnering with BharatPay. So there's a huge amount of these success stories. So if you are not having an innovation lab and you are not looking annually at top 10 innovations you will do in your business and what digital brands are coming to you in the coming, you're not really doing justice to the opportunity. Right? So that's the size of the opportunity. Yeah. Moving further. Again, let's look at what's going to come in future. Go next. So as Shekhar mentioned, AI. So AI has been around. ChatGPT has just expedited some of the adoptions and concerns we had on AI. But AI needs to be think as a solution to many complex problems. Customer experience, customer innovations, Internet of Things, again IoT to transform the banking industry. Huge amount of devices coming. All kinds of devices will be in customers' house within next 5 to 10 years. How do we use them for banking? Felipe mentioned, use data from them. You are using data from them to drive your products, your messages, and so on and so forth. Open banking is little away, but again, that's a major opportunity where banks' products will be sold by others using the services. And metaverse. So gaming, metaverse is a great way to put your brand out there in minds of millennials and Generation Z. So that's where metaverse is mainly to put up your brand into the next generation 3D, mainly used through mobile and VR devices. Moving further, blockchain is going to be a platform which governments and consortiums are going to be using, where you can partner from tech perspective, and gamification, quant computing, and biometrics helps very large communities from digitization perspective. So these are some of the trends we believe you need to watch out for. Go next. Now, digital-only bank. Now, this is a very major step. RBI has received already a Niti Aayog proposal to introduce a digital banking license with limitations. And that's coming your way. This will introduce fundamentally new generation, pure play digital banks. RBI just wants to be cautious given the payment bank experience and how the payment licenses were used and then done. And last but not the least, go next. The CBDC, the digital rupee which has come in, again, while it's between bank to bank, it's going to go into B2C. Yep. So that I'll just stop there. And this is the key opportunity we believe each Indian bank needs to leverage. And glad to see everyone here. Thank you so much.